Okay. Hey everyone. Thank you for joining in with us this evening. Um, I'm your host, Jaren Dorman, Design Community Manager here at Gravity Sketch, and today we're going to be making some Speedforms in Gravity Sketch. Um, you might notice we're at a pretty different time for this live. We're just experimenting with different live times and seeing what might work best for the community and things like that. We might do these actually maybe even earlier in the morning. So we're just trying some things out. But of course, if you miss the live sessions, you can always go back and watch them from the beginning. So you never miss out. But yeah, so with that, today what we're going to be looking at is making speedforms in Gravity Sketch. And if you don't really know what speedforms are, it's typically a term used in the automotive industry, in the design kind of world, where you basically a speed form is a very sculpted, very elegant form with creases and curves and rounds, and it's a way of exploring shape and exploring form in 3D. And so this is used by automotive designers traditionally, historically, to explore automotive forms and automotive shapes. But of course, you can apply these kinds of shapes to a lot of other things other than cars. You can apply it to products, hair dryers, really almost anything really. You could convert it into like a speed form-esque type of form. But at its simple form, at its simple nature, it is form exploration. So it's a technique that's used by a lot of designers and artists, and it's really quite fun to do in Gravity Sketch and quick. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And I just brought up a few images that I found on the internet to show an example of speed forms in case anybody watching doesn't really know what speed forms are. We're not really going to be using these as reference. They're more just as examples for anybody watching. So I'm going to kind of have them off to the side here, and what we're going to do is we're going to just go through a couple sort of like techniques that you can try to explore speed forms in Gravity Sketch. And we're just going to make a few, and hopefully it'll inspire all of you to do some form exploration as well in Gravity Sketch. So first thing I want to do here is I actually want to turn the mirror on and get that going, because we definitely want some symmetry when we're doing these. And for this session, we're not really worried about scale or anything. We just want shapes. We want forms. So that's what we're going for, really. Let me just actually unanchor these so they're always kind of up in the corner here, not really in my view. So one of the first things we can do with speed forms is we can sketch, and oftentimes speed forms really start with a sketch, especially in 2D, and it's not really much different in here in Gravity Sketch. You're sketching some forms, and you're trying to find a nice balance between with your form here. So speed forms, there are some principles that make nice speed forms, and those principles are really like proportion, balance, and how all the curves and how all the lines talk to each other. So it really is kind of a balance of everything. So it's the overall shape, and as well as the smaller shapes inside of it. And so, like if you're doing speed forms for automotive, you might add some suggestions of wheel wells and tires and things like that, where wheels might go. So we might add just 4 little humps here, and we have now a speed form for a vehicle. And so this can be an early exploration, an early concept into a vehicle design. And we can duplicate this, and we can start taking these lines and changing their angle and changing their proportions. So we're moving things around. Maybe these need to be higher up or something for some reason. And maybe this comes out a little bit wider, something like that. Maybe it's smaller. And so it's really just playing around with lines and shape. Another thing with Speedforms too, what makes Speedforms particularly nice, it looks like I did a duplicate here, is they are expressed in a minimum or minimal amount of curves. So notice I'm not really, I'm not really doing a lot of hairy sketching here. I'm not really like doing a bunch of stuff like this. I mean, although you can do that, there's no rule that says you can't. It probably might be more a stylistic preference in that regard. You may like actually a lot of hairy lines because you can explore all the different options, all the different ways these lines can go. So it's really a way to just get your ideas out there and not be so concerned with mechanical or engineering constraints. Another thing I should say too is if you're watching and you have any questions about Gravity Sketch or the tool, I'll be monitoring the chat so I can see it and hear. Feel free to ask away, and I'll be checking periodically throughout the live and try and answer your questions. So moving right along here. So we've got some sketches, and maybe let's try one more here, just to really nail home this workflow. Just move this a little bit. We can try a very different proportion here, so we can sort of jet this out, and now you've got some sort of like van shape now. It's kind of dynamic looking. It's interesting. Needs refinement, but that's okay. So you can see very easily, with just a few adjustments to lines and positioning, you can get a very different package design here. And this is what a lot of automotive designers are using Gravity Sketch for, and a lot of designers are using for just finding interesting shapes. And the cool thing is it's fast as sketching, but you have the benefit of being in 3D while you do it. So we're going to save this on its own layer, and we're going to just call it sketch. So let's hide that, and let's make a new layer. I'm actually going to call it Sculpt 1. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with a primitive, and we're going to go into, let's see, I'm going to take the surface tool, and we're going to start using our NURBS surfaces. So actually, let me change the color of this to like a lighter color so we can see it better. And we're going to try and just connect these dots in the middle. And then we're just going to pull this shape around till we can get something kind of nice here. So we got this shape. Now let's try and add some secondary forms to this. So what we can do is pull another shape out, and we probably want it to be sort of like a medium type of form, you know, where it's countering our above form in some way, and it's not as long, but balancing it out. And it's kind of hard to explain form theory sometimes. I mean, there's all kinds of principles and things like that, but it almost is just a feeling, and comes from practice of finding forms that feel nice. But just what really makes things look nice and feel nice is the balance of all the volumes and all the shapes and all of them talking to each other in a pleasing way. And so we can kind of finish this up here. And we could probably leave this here just like this. I mean, this you could say this is your concept number one. If you wanted to express a little more, you could maybe add another form in here. And maybe it's part of this above form. And just, you know, pull things around. Find what works. So this could be like our speed form number one. And play with this. Is it sharp? Is it, you know, organic? Where is the emphasis being drawn on this form, on this shape? And so right now, this kind of feels like some kind of, I don't know, really, really fancy like hand sander. But if we then take this other part and we kind of mirror it, trying to think of what axis that would be, like, I don't know, the x-axis or something like that, then suddenly it kind of feels like motorcycle-esque, right? So it's almost like breaking things down into their essence, into their basic forms, and then manipulating that and stretching that. So we could shrink this a little bit. You know, when we've got, if we really wanted to get like detailed with it, we could add a windshield here for it. Probably won't end up keeping this because I think that starts to express too much. You might want to have that just as your form and leave it there. You can bulge that out just a little bit more to balance it out. But see, that could be like our form concept one, and you know that only took us a matter of minutes to complete. And then what we can do is we can start taking our forms that constructed our shape, and we can then move them around in a new way, finding new forms. And so this looks a little bit crazy, but I mean, this could inform some new kinds of detail that you maybe otherwise would never realize if you're sketching in 2D. See, like this kind of opening here could be really interesting for like a vehicle of some kind. Another fun thing that you can do is, along with these surfaces, you can have sketches. So we'll simplify that. we can take this sketch here, and all of a sudden this feels like a car now, just because we did that. You look at this and you're like, oh, this is some kind of car concept. So it's immediately, again, like I said before, breaking things down into their basic forms, basic shapes, and expressing a form in the least amount of forms and least amount of as lines possible. Sorry, I'm like struggling to get my words out because I'm thinking about how I want to best explain this. But I hope this is making sense. So, and you can really start getting into these details like I am here, and come upon some really, really interesting, innovative new designs. And you could just do this all day long. Obviously, you have to decide on something. You can't just do it all day long, but I mean, you can though. And so, this is a really fun place for us to start. And now we have a very interesting, see if I can kind of represent like a ground here. And now we have some place to start with our sketch. And so I can kind of fill this in. And I'm in a sketching mind here. So this is an important thing to realize here is I'm in a sketching mode. I'm not thinking about this from a 3D modeling perspective really at all. I'm thinking about this from a sketching perspective. What is working sketch-wise? But I am in 3D. See, that's the thing, is everything I am doing is in 3D. So I'm understanding my design, my concept, my sketch, but in a 3D way. And so that's probably one of the hardest things when you're sketching in 2D is you can draw all the views that you want, but you're never going to fully understand what's going on in 3D until you 3D model it or have some sort of 3D representation of what you've done. And it's oftentimes in those moments you realize, oh, that's not really kind of tapering the way I imagined it or that I thought. And you realize all your strokes and all your lines need to be adjusted and changed, which is fine. It's all part of the process. But the cool thing about doing it this way is you're doing both at the same time. So you're sketching, your concept, you're sketching your ideas, but you're also seeing how it behaves and how it interacts with the other strokes in 3D, and then you can realize, okay, that might not make really a lot of sense to have it there, and then you can see it from the side view and decide, okay, that makes sense, I like that, maybe reposition this here, and so on and so forth. So this is another way you can approach Speedforms and Gravity Sketch, where you just pull out surfaces and move them around and find what's working, find what will be memorable, and what will be what will work. So this is like another sort of version here. And this is like more surface based. And so you can take these surfaces here and duplicate them. And don't be afraid to edit them either. So you can go into edit mode, pull it around, change it if you don't like it. So I think you get the point there. And and that would be kind of like a kit bashing technique where you've made sort of a library of shapes here, and you're just moving them around, positioning them. Let's check some comments to see anything coming through. Oh yeah, thanks, Emil. Let's see, Yvonne, or Javon, you're asking about Adobe Medium type sculpting. Yeah, so people have asked about sculpting in Gravity Sketch, and have asked about being able to sculpt inside Gravity Sketch. That's something that the development team is very much aware of, and it's really a technical feat at this point in time. So I believe that's something that maybe we would like to do in the future, but it's not going to be anytime soon, because the way it works, at least in VR, is it's a voxel based sculpting, and so it kind of changes the whole framework, the way the geometry works currently in Gravity Sketch. So it sounds easy to say, oh yeah, just make things sculptable, or put things in Gravity Sketch that you can sculpt on. There's a little more to it than that. So, but it is something interesting, and I think the development team is definitely interested in that. But it's just a matter of resources and time spent in integrating that. I personally agree. I think it would be a really powerful function inside Gravity Sketch. But keep telling us the things you want, because the more you say it, the more you talk about it, the greater level of importance things go as far as what we prioritize our time on. So please don't be silent on what you want to see in Gravity Sketch. So what we've done here is we've made some surfaces, some NURBS surfaces, and what's cool is when we export these, we can bring them into Rhino and continue working with them, continue editing them, to continue, like with these actual surfaces that we've made, we can continue manipulating them in other programs, Fusion 360, Alias, Rhino, and you can build upon these, and that's the benefit of making NURBS and Gravity Sketch and exporting. But the next method I want to show you as well. This is another kind of cool thing here. So if you're on Rift and you're tethered to your computer, this will not work for Quest users, I want to say, but this does work for people that are tethered to computers, and that is you get the orthographic viewport, and you can see your sketches and your models in orthographic view, which is pretty cool. And then you can tap on it, or I think grab it. Let's see here. And take a screenshot. So that's pretty cool. Grab the side view here. Turn our sketches back on. We can see our sketches in side view. And what's cool is we can just take, these look like sketches, but we can take screenshots of them and they're in 3D, which is really cool. And then we can keep sketching on top. So it's not like you're wasting your time in Gravity Sketch where, you've made this sketch and then all you need to, now you need to go back to paper. If you're a traditional 2D sketcher, now you got to go back and continue sketching, as a separate thing. You can take screenshots directly from here, PNG, whatever you want to do, and use these actual 3D sketches to sketch on top of. Take some 3/4 views and continue working on top of them. And they're already sketched in 3D. In school, we were taught, how to sketch in 3/4, sketch in 3D, and plot out our lines and everything, which is still valuable. I'm not downplaying the value of understanding that, because fundamentals are important. But this just gets you there much quicker. It gets you there faster. You can get to your idea more efficiently. So the this might be the last option we'll see that I show you guys, but call this Sculpt 2. And so if I turn the sketches off, we're in here. Another way you can explore Speedforms in Gravity Sketch is we can go to sub D mode, and we can start playing around with sub D forms. And so whenever I start in sub D, I usually like to start with a cube, because especially if you're looking to have like closed forms and enclosed shapes in Gravity Sketch, a cube is inherently closed. It's a closed volume, and so when you start with the cube, you don't have to connect all the faces together. It's just already all there. And then so what we can do is we can just like loop select, and now we have this whole loop selected here. We can scale it, and we can extrude it out, right? So something like this. We're just gonna put it there like that. And let's just say it's a rough speed form and a low poly kind of interpretation of it. Let me just close up the back here. And so now we have this shape. And so what we can do is we can actually smooth it, and now we have a blob. And what's cool about sub D is you can add edge loops to get increasing levels of detail. So if we use our index finger trigger here, kind of lightly squeeze, we can slide our edge loop here. And if we slide it to the top, you see we get a crease towards the top here. And if we put another edge loop, it gets sharper. And so the whole kind of logic behind sub D is it will create the smoothest point, or the smoothest surface, or the smoothest transition between each point. And it kind of averages out as points are added. So notice how the surface doesn't come right up to this point and then curves between this one to this one. It's always curving underneath these points. So it's an average underneath. It's like the points are informing generally where the surface lays. So let's get rid of that. But what we can do is we can start adding edge loops here, and we can start pulling out shapes. I'm going to add another edge loop here. And what's fun is you can just start playing around. So you can pull shapes out and see where the shape takes you. You can start sharpening the bottom here. And see what the results you get. It really is an exploration process and finding out what works. So I'm not trying to be perfect here. I'm just trying to find something that could work, and something that could be a nice design. Now this is a pretty, I guess I would say probably a pretty generic sort of automotive speed form here, but it's just an example of what you could do when you start sharpening things around. Maybe you want to add some more edge loops. Now we're getting a little bit crazy here, a little bit wild, a little bit interesting, sort of seeing where these shapes can take us, and sort of what this concept, what this car really is all about. I mean, we completely just changed this entire design. It's now this sort of potato, you could say. but it's as quick and easy as that. And what we can do is we can, just like the other ones, we can duplicate this and pull things around in a new way. So maybe we want this, and maybe we want to pull things in, tighten it up. Maybe these proportions are a little too blobby for our liking. Maybe we're looking for something a little more aggressive. And if I was spending a lot more time on this, I would really be maybe a little more careful with what I'm doing here. But I don't really need to be. I don't really need to be that careful. I want to find something interesting. Find something that works. And so now we've had this really interesting form here. And what we can do is, like before, we can take our sketch and start sketching around our design here and just suggesting some of these details, suggesting, how where wheels might go, So now we've got our wheels. And to better ground this, I think we need maybe some sort of ground shadow. So in order to do something like that, we can get our volume tool, go into player mode, and I think we're already there we want. So we can here we go. Let's make this follow the shape a little bit more accurately. But you get what I'm trying to do here. We're sort of grounding the shape and giving it some sense of space. And so we can go back to the ink tool here. Now we got like kind of a pretty dark line, and we can start defining maybe some more details, some parts of this car that might exist, some features that we might have. And now we're really having fun here, trying to find, how is this going to, how are we going to break up the doors? How are we going to break up some of the part lines even? I apologize, for anybody watching through a car designer and not loving these proportions. I apologize. I'm just, having fun, just showing an example of how you can really just have fun and explore what's possible. And I'm using a combination of these dark lines, these shapes. I'm going to simplify this just a little more. Probably want to bring the weight of this line back. Taper it here. And then have some sort of like buttress, some sort of flying buttress form here. I don't know, maybe that doesn't work, but it's interesting, it's it's not about what works. It's about, what could inform, an interesting concept later. And that's what it's all about. Be sketchy with it. Fill in these, some of these areas, and show what could be filled in. So we're getting like kind of an interesting idea going here. And then something we can do on top of this is take our color that we originally sculpted with and start sort of filling some of this stuff in. Maybe that's another way we can further define it. And so now we're just like suggesting our kind of imagining that a different way. So like you can fill it in like this. That's one way we could do it. Or we can take our sub D surface maybe and fill it in that way. Connect that up there. And so you see, I think you see what I mean here. And it's really just using a combination of the surfacing tools and the sketches and, just some simple tools in Gravity Sketch to explore forms, explore shape here. You can change the colors. You can see, what works. You can start to kind of block in some sort of windshield here. And so, we've already got some sort of rough concept that we can then build upon and use. You can put all of this under one layer and then just kind of ghost it and start sketching on top of it again and refining it over and over. And this is really what I wanted to show you all, just some ways you could approach doing speed forms and doing forms in Gravity Sketch with ease and not being too technical. But the amazing thing is that it's all in 3D, and so I can, take out my menu here, get my screenshot out, pick a nice view, choose sort of like my, kind of my lens here. Got like a 30 millimeter, maybe, 40 millimeter, and then take the screenshot. And then we can take that image and continue sketching over top of it. Or if you have the orthographic viewport, you can get a perfect side view of our vehicles and use these to sketch over top of. Bring these into KeyShot if you want more accurate kind of like lighting and shading, and do whatever you want with it. Let's check some of these comments. I haven't looked here in a minute. Let's see. Let's see. So you start with a cube. Why not a sphere? Is it the flat surfaces? So the reason why I started with the cube is actually the cube at a polygon level is much simpler than a sphere. So if I can just show you really quickly, if I start with a sphere here, and maybe just kind of go gray. And so say we wanted to, let me get rid of that. Say we wanted to actually start with a sub-D sphere. See all these points? There's just so many points. This is just really a hassle to work with when you're trying to just be simple in the beginning. It's kind of going crazy because there's so many points on here. But you see what I mean. It's just a lot to work with. It's much, much simpler to work with a cube. And as a matter of fact, here's another little geometry secret for you. If you have your cube selected and you have a perfect cube and you convert it to sub-D and you smooth it, it's a perfect sphere. So you have a sphere, and a smoothed cube in sub-D is a sphere. And so we can continue extruding from it, adding more detail, as I said before, and bringing some of that cube back into it. So that's why I start with a cube, is because it's super simple. Yeah, Mara, Gravity Sketch is completely free now to all individuals. So go and download it and start using it. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Let's just recap quickly what I showed all of you, in case any of you joined a little bit late. So we're going to turn on some of these layers. So the first thing I showed was just how you can simply sketch in Gravity Sketch, sketch in 3D, and explore shapes. And just by simply repositioning some of your lines, you can get very different packages. And that's what we did here. We just took some of the lines that we sketched from this one, we edited them a little bit, sort of pulled the points around, and now we have a completely different package. And so the point of that is that it's just really fast, and you can just have fun with finding different shapes and proportions. And then the next sort of example of making speed forms that we went through here was using the NURBS surface tool in Gravity Sketch, where you can pull different surfaces together and move them around to find different shapes, and use that in combination with some sketching to define some details like where the wheels are located, maybe some ground shadows here, and again, just exploring shape. And it's kind of like a kit bashing approach, because you've made all these surfaces already, and you can kind of just like the strokes, duplicate them and move them around, and find interesting proportions. And then our last example here was working with sub-D, and then kind of a combination of everything really that we've shown thus far. So we're using sub-D as well as sketching, and some surfaces, some individual surfaces, some shadow casting here, and it's all to just get an effect. It's all to explain an idea, because at the end of the day, that's what you're doing, is you are trying to just convey a concept, convey an idea. And if you can boil that idea down into a few surfaces, or a few strokes, in as few strokes as possible, as few surface changes as possible, you might have a really powerful design. And that's part of I think that's also part of the exploration with doing Speedforms, especially in automotive, is if you can make an iconic shape as a Speedform in a simple form without having to see all the headlights, every single crease, every door, part line, everything. If it's just the shape, it really forces you to think about the originality and the power of the form that you're working with. All the other stuff in the cars, the part lines and the headlights and the mirrors and everything, all that stuff is gravy, and that comes later in the design process. But it just really makes you think about the core form. So again, I just want to thank everybody that's been watching. I hope you learned a thing or two and have seen how you can approach making Speedforms and Gravity Sketch, and how you can really just have fun, be loose, and explore and create. So yeah, thank you everybody, and make sure to tune in next week. We do these live sketches twice a week. Make sure to like and subscribe to our videos. Click the little bell button. It helps the algorithm promote our videos more out on YouTube, and tells YouTube algorithm, hey, people are liking your videos, so we're gonna put it more out there, more in front of more faces. So make sure to do that, and our content will be seen more by more people. So if you're already watching us on a consistent basis, but you're not following us or you're not liking, just click that little like button. It's real easy. If you're on TikTok, feel free to go follow us on TikTok. We're on there now. We only have a few things up, but we're going to be posting more on there. Follow us on our Instagram as well. And then, of course, on our YouTube channel, we have just a ton of training content beyond these live sketches that we try and put up as well, to cover any workflows that we think would be useful to the community. So anyway, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.